In Denmark, ferries are a very familiar sight, as the country consists of over 480 islands, of which 100 are inhabited. At Rodby harbour, on the island of Lolland, the ferry links Denmark to Germany and mainland Europe. The landscape of Denmark is low-lying, with wide stretches of cornfields and forests. And in this sea of fields are small, neat farms, many going back centuries. And in the villages, centuries-old coloured churches rise above the low-lying houses. And nowhere in Denmark is very far from the sea. This is the country where the Vikings once set out across the oceans to explore and conquer distant lands. And the sea is still a way of life, with harbour towns like Nykøbing on the island of Falster next to Lolland. The love of the sea has given rise to the Danish tradition of summer houses by the beach. At Marielyst on Falster, the beach extends to around 20 kilometres, and like all beaches in the country, is protected from any development. Simple, individual wooden houses are built in the woods and used as holiday and weekend homes. Marielyst began in the late 19th century as a place to recuperate, and the popularity of fresh sea air and simple living caught on. As engineering development progressed, bridges began to replace ferries on major routes. In the 1930s, the Storstrøm Bridge was built. It is just under 2 miles long and carries both road and rail. Before the bridge was commissioned by Danish state railways, trains would have been loaded onto ferries to cross the water. So the new bridge took hours of a journey to Rodby harbour for both trains as well as road traffic. For the next 50 years, this was the only road connection between the islands. But by the 1970s, with more vehicles on the road, the bridge was becoming too narrow, and large lorries could barely pass. A new bridge was needed. So in 1985, the Faru Bridge was opened, with 4 lanes for traffic. This suspension bridge is unusual in having only a single cable structure in the centre. There are actually 2 Faru bridges, which meet on a small island in the middle of the strait, and the suspension bridge is high enough to let small ships pass underneath. In 1989, Denmark was the first country in the world to ban straw and stubble burning, though in places, like Bø Island, it still seems to carry on. The old practice of burning had the advantage of removing weed seeds and creating a natural fertilizer from the ash, which could be ploughed back into the soil. However, it pollutes the atmosphere and releases large amounts of carbon dioxide. It's also potentially dangerous if the fire gets out of control. To the east of Falster is the island of Moon, which pushes out into the Baltic Sea. And on the southeast corner is a lighthouse warning ships of the nearby cliffs, which are one of the highest parts of Denmark and one of the country's most popular destinations for tourists. These are the cliffs of Moon, which stretch for 6 kilometres. At their highest, these chalk cliffs stand at over 120 metres. They are made up of millions of microscopic creatures which lived on the seabed over 70 million years ago. Every so often, large sections break off with erosion from the sea, as a result of water freezing in the cracks during the winter. For a period of time, the spoil creates a new beach and colours the sea a milky blue. And with every fall of chalk from the cliffs, fossils become exposed, and the cliffs become a popular place to collect them. Visitors also come to see Liselund in the woods above the cliffs, which is a rare romantic landscape from the late 18th century. The Calmette family built a small thatched picturesque castle in a neo-classical style. This romantic house was to be a place where the family could be as informal as the period allowed. The idea for Lieserlen came from the Calmette's trip to Germany and Switzerland, where they were inspired by the landscape and romantic buildings. They surrounded their new house with the latest ideas for a landscaped garden, which was carefully contrived to look entirely natural. Other buildings were added, including the Norwegian house, which was used as a place for guests to stay. Some of the other buildings have since disappeared over the cliffs as they eroded away. In the late 19th century, the new owner of Lieserlen, Baron Rosenkrantz, built a larger house close by, and in 1938 his descendants decided to make over the estate to a preservation trust, who would maintain it and open this rare landscape to the public. The Queen Alexandrina Bridge, built in 1943, joins Møn to Zealand, Denmark's largest island. A distinctive feature in the Danish landscape is all the well-kept manor houses, and in particular the beautifully built farm buildings that surround them, which often go back centuries. They show quite how important farming has been in the Danish economy. And in the 18th century, the profitable estates of the Danish nobility allowed them to build impressive houses. Ledreborg Palace is one of the finest examples of Baroque and Rococo architecture in Northern Europe. The palace was built between 1740 and 1745 by Count Johan Ludwig Holstein, who was head of the Danish Chancellery. And today, the estate is still the home of the Holstein-Ledreborg family. The palace has undergone very little change in 250 years, both inside and out. The symmetrical courtyard, entrance lodge and outbuildings have not been substantially altered, and as a result, Ledreborg is one of the most complete 18th century houses and unique in Danish architectural history. With a population of around 2 million people, Copenhagen is considered to be one of the best cities in the world for quality of life and environmental sensitivity, with 35% of the population commuting by bicycle. The city is home to the Danish royal family here at Amalienborg. The 4 palaces were originally built for 4 nobles, but after a fire in the old royal palace in 1794, the royal family bought them and have lived here ever since. Overlooking the palaces is Frederick's Church, also known as the Marble Church, and has the largest dome in Scandinavia. Christiansborg Palace is the 3rd palace on this very site, and the main building was not finally finished until 1928. However, the 18th century horseshoe-shaped courtyard has survived the centuries. Today, the royal family use the reception rooms on state occasions, and the palace is home to the Danish Parliament, as well as the Supreme Court. Denmark's crown jewels are housed in Rosenborg Castle. This is one of the most visited places in the city and contains thousands of royal objects collected over the centuries. The castle was built in the Renaissance style in 1606 as a summer residence. It has remained largely untouched since it was built. Copenhagen has a number of world-renowned art galleries, including the Danish National Gallery and the Carlsberg Glyptotek, which is built around the personal collection of the brewing magnate Carl Jacobsen, and ranges from ancient sculpture to impressionist paintings. One of the best places for a view over the city is the Round Tower, built in the 1640s as an observatory for the nearby university. Inside is a spiral ramp wide enough to allow a horse-drawn carriage to get to the top. Perhaps the best-known monument, and also one of the smallest, is to be found on the edge of the harbour, the Little Mermaid. Inspired by Hans Christian Andersen's story, the bronze figure was placed by the shoreline in 1913 and soon became an icon for the city. Back in the centre is another very popular attraction, Tivoli Gardens. Opened in 1843, Tivoli has remained just as popular with the Danes as it has with visitors. At night, the gardens are lit in a breathtaking display, and people can go to concerts, eat in one of the many restaurants, and enjoy the rides, including the Starflyer, the world's tallest carousel. Copenhagen is home to some outstanding modern architecture, such as the Royal Danish Library, known as the Black Diamond, because of the black glass and the granite imported from Zimbabwe. And one of the latest buildings is the Copenhagen Opera House, and one of the most expensive opera houses ever built, with costs in excess of £300 million. It was a gift of A.P. Møller, co-founder of the Maersk shipping line. The architect was Henning Larsen, and construction began in 2000 and took 6 years to complete. Before the new opera house was built, opera was performed here at the Royal Theatre, which was built in 1872 to replace an 18th century predecessor. Today, it is the home of the Royal Danish Ballet. It fronts Kongens Nytorv, the King's New Square, created over 300 years ago. It also marks the end of Nyhavn, or New Harbour, which was dug by soldiers in the 1670s to allow ships to unload goods in the centre of the city. Back in the 19th century, this was a notorious place with a seedy reputation for cheap bars, rough hotels and brothels. Today, Nyhavn and its colourful houses is one of the most popular places to have a drink, catch a tourist boat, or stay in one of the smart new hotels. City Hall Square is marked by Copenhagen City Hall and its Italian-inspired clock tower. And running off the square is the Walking Street, the main shopping district. This is the longest pedestrian shopping area in Europe and full of the city's most expensive and famous stores. It's a popular place to meet and often packed with people. The city is full of old buildings and historic sites, including the Citadel, rebuilt in 1663 following a Swedish attack, and is still used by the Danish military. Next to the fort are rows of yellow-coloured 18th century houses for naval personnel and built for the expanding Danish fleet. In Copenhagen harbour, ferries come and go between Sweden and Norway, as well as being a stopping point for cruise liners from around the world. But things were not so peaceful in 1801 when a British fleet attacked. Trekroner Fort was an important part of the Danish line of defence during the Battle of Copenhagen. This was the battle where Horatio Nelson, second in command, inflicted a heavy defeat on the Danish Navy. In the naval dockyard, built on reclaimed land, an 18th century crane for lifting masts still stands as a reminder of past times. The dockyard is now a museum. Also on reclaimed land is Christianshavn, which was built up in the 17th century as part of the fortifications of Copenhagen. It was originally laid out as an independent merchant's town, and clearly the influence of Dutch architecture, as well as the use of canals, gives the area a very distinctive style. And one of the best ways of seeing Christianshavn is from the canals. North of Copenhagen, at Rungsted, is the house of one of Denmark's best-known 20th century writers, Karen Blixen. She is best known for her book, Out of Africa, an account of her life in that continent, which was made into an Oscar-winning film starring Meryl Streep in 1985. Apart from her years in Africa, she spent her childhood and later life here at her parents' manor house. And it's where she died in 1962. The house is now a museum dedicated to her life and work. 5 miles up the coast at Humlebæk is the most visited art museum in Denmark, the Louisiana Museum of Modern Art. The permanent collection features works from the 1940s from some of the best-known artists, including Picasso, Warhol and Lichtenstein. In the grounds is a sculpture garden overlooking the sea, including a work by Henry Moore. The museum was created in 1958 by the then owner of the property, and since then new galleries have been added to house the growing collection, which now stands at more than 3,000 works of art. This is Frederiksborg Castle, and the largest Renaissance palace in Scandinavia, which is now the Museum of National History. It was built between 1602 and 1620 by King Christian IV on 3 small islands in a lake close to Hillerød, and replaced an earlier castle. For the next 200 years, the castle was used as a royal residence, as well as a place for the anointing and crowning of Danish monarchs. In 1859, a disastrous fire destroyed much of the interior. The reconstruction was funded by public subscription, as well as a large donation from the Carlsberg brewing magnate Carl Jacobsen, on the condition that the castle was turned into a museum. The magnificent Baroque garden is away from the house across the lake and was laid out in the 1720s. A restoration program was begun in 1995 to bring the gardens back to their original design. A few miles to the north, on the shore of Lake Esrum, is Frederiksborg Palace, the Danish royal family's spring and autumn residence. It's also the most used of all the royal residences and is often the site of important state visits. It was built in the 1720s for King Frederick IV as a small pleasure palace. During construction, a peace treaty with Sweden was signed at the unfinished building, ending a 20-year conflict. The palace was then named Frederiksborg, which translates as the Palace of Peace. In the 1750s, the main palace block was extended with the addition of 4 identical corner pavilions. The large formal garden layout still exists, though most of the planting has been replaced by grass. And the palace and gardens are open to the public during the summer months. Overlooking the narrow strait between Denmark and Sweden is Kronborg Castle, one of the most important Renaissance-style castles in the world. There has been a fortress on this site since the 15th century, when Danish kings decided to charge a toll for ships entering and leaving the Baltic Sea. The present building dates from the end of the 16th century. It was captured by the Swedes in 1658 and showed that it was not impregnable, so that after its return to Denmark, the defences were beefed up with additional lines of ditches and ramparts, making Kronborg the most formidable fortress in Europe. By the 18th century, the fortress was being used as a prison, as well as a military fort, and this continued until the early 1900s, when the army left and the castle was renovated and opened as a museum. But perhaps the castle is best known around the world as Elsinore, and the setting for William Shakespeare's famous play, Hamlet. Shakespeare never set foot in Denmark, yet when he wrote the play around 1600, he imagined it perfectly. And today the play is often performed in this magnificent castle. And a perfect place to end this journey.